to the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast with your hosts Griffin Palmer, CJ Hickman, Jason Cabrera, and Ryan Mitchell.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Friday, May 26th. It is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast. Let's welcome everybody to the show. I'm your host, Griffin Palmer, joined as always by my co-host, CJ the Hitman Hickman, and Jason Cabrera. What's up, guys?
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, and yourself?
Oh, good. I'm good, man.
Good. Jason, how about you? You there, bud?
I am there. I'm here. I'm both places. I'm doing good. How are you?
Okay, wow. Clearly a big lag between the East Coast and Arizona there. So, all right. Glad you're here.
That's what happens.
We're
more laid back here, so.
Oh, okay. That's what it is. All right, well, we have an amazing show for you guys today, as always, and today we will be continuing our dive into the consensus ranks. Everybody's been giving us a lot of good review on the last couple. We're hoping to keep that momentum going as we begin our look at the wide receiver position. So we're going to be bringing you our top wide receivers, hoping to get through the wide receiver ones today. Of course, we're going to bring you all of the top headlines from around the league as well. As always, if you guys enjoy the show, please make sure you subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher and Podcast Addict and every other streaming service that you can find. We're probably there. You can also follow us on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. Get up to the date information from our accounts or interact with us individually as well. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. You can email your questions and submit them at thefantasyfootballfanatics@gmail.com. Or on Twitter or on Facebook, really wherever. We check them all pretty regularly. And if you really want to go that next step and support the show, which we greatly appreciate, help support what we're doing here, lets us keep making shows, keeps the lights on, as it were, head over to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics, where you can get yourself a bunch of bonus podcasts, materials, lots of cool stuff that we're adding on that service on a regular basis, and cool things still upcoming. So again, patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. So we have a ton to get to today, so as we've been doing for this whole segment, we're going to skip the warm-up and go right into the league headlines. So we'll preface this by saying we are recording early in the week. Myself specifically had some obligations and commitments I had to deal with later in the week, so we're recording a little bit early. So this is news changes as of now. If we missed something big, we will cover it on Tuesday's show. A couple things to talk about with some league-wide headlines. I know, I can't talk.
There we go.
It's a bad start. We're off the rails already. NFL rule changes have been passed. For starters, the celebration rule has been changed. Players can now celebrate in groups, they can celebrate to the ground, and they can celebrate while using the ball as a prop. So, back to the days of extravagant shows, and a lot of people say that was a lot of the entertainment factor in the touchdowns. I know that we have one grumpy old man in the show here that disagrees, so you want to weigh in real fast, Jason?
Mr. Grumps.
You're going to call me a grumpy old man?
Mr. Grumps.
I'm going to weigh in on your face.
I had to preference
it. Shut up. All right, so I know I'm in the vast majority, or a minority here when it comes to this. And
there you go.
Everyone's all excited and happy, and they're all like, hey, it's going to be fun again. Look, if you can't have fun playing football, you shouldn't be playing football. Okay? All this crap about, we want to have fun. We want to have fun. You play football for a living. That's not fun.
You play a game.
That's my problem with it. That's my problem with it. I don't understand the whole we're not having fun unless we're twerking or proposing to a cheerleader or whatever else.
I'm not a fan of the twerking.
They want to do it. They want to do it, and they want to celebrate and get together and do little ballets and play around and act like jackasses. That's fine. They can do that, but they need to keep the show moving. And that was one of the things. They changed a bunch of rules to speed up the game, and now they're adding this to say, now we can do group celebrations and all this other stuff. It's like, so everything you did, you just undid, unless they keep that clock going. So we'll see.
Well, the keeping the clock going is supposed to be a part of it. I'm not sure if that actually, I didn't read into it in depth, but that was part of the stipulation.
Right.
You can celebrate all you want, but as soon as you score the touchdown, the play clock keeps going. You have to get lined up for the next play. So I'm
not sure how that's going to work or how it's going to happen, and I have a feeling we're going to see some weird penalties because of this whole time. Delay of game for weirdness, but we'll see.
We'll see. Also, overtime has been reduced. It's been reduced from 15 minutes to 10 minutes, which I still think is dumb. I understand the thought process. They have to play another 5 minutes of football. Say it's a Monday night game, they have to play again on Thursday. That's bad scheduling for starters. But also, at that point, you're talking about less than, I think it was like 6 or 7% of the game that you're cutting out. So it's not really even that huge of a chunk. I don't know. It kind of gets you to speed up the game, I guess, the overtime, because time is more essential, and maybe they think that's going to up the intensity, and if that's the narrative, I get it, but that's not the way they've been approaching it, trying to sell it to us. So, I don't know. Less football is disappointing to me, but, it is what it is. Not a lot of games go to overtime anyway, so probably not a huge impact as it's, on, of course, ties. Nobody likes ties, and we did have 2 of them, or 3 of them last year.
Right. If they're going to do this and cut it down to 10 minutes, then they need to just set a 10-minute clock and say, okay, it's going to run 10 minutes, and whatever happens, and whoever has the highest score at the end of the 10 minutes wins. That would make more sense to me than the way the rules are currently structured. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. And some quarterback news. According to New York Jets beat writer Steve Serby, I think is how you say it, he said that Christian Hackenberg is currently leading the quarterback competition over Bryce Petty and Josh McCown. So, that's something. I'm kind of surprised because Josh McCown was kind of brought in.
A real person.
Well,
I'd be a real person.
He could be. He could be a real guy. In running back news, Dallas running back Ezekiel Elliott was in a minor car crash earlier in the week. He was said to have hit his head, but after examination, they determined he did not have a concussion. He is expected to resume practice with the team, already doing work on the side with trainers, so good news there. Also, Miami head coach Adam Gase has said that Jay Ajayi could get as many as 350 carries this season.
Wow. That's a lot.
People stop giving Adam Gase monsters because they're playing with him a little bit. That's not good.
That's a lot.
No more 5-hour energy for Adam Gase.
Just in general,
that's a lot of carries. It's great for fantasy because it's the guy that's big on your high on your board. You already got that guarantee.
Well, considering that's Jay Ajayi getting almost 100 more attempts than he got last year, for fantasy, we're definitely okay with that. I will not be arguing with him getting that uptick in volume, so that's exciting. It could, if that continues to be the narrative, it could be moving him up our rankings. We shall see. Last bit of news in wide receiver news. San Diego first-round rookie wide receiver Mike Williams injured his back in the first day of minicamp, so he has been sitting out.
Come on.
So, it happens every year. Someone gets hurt, makes the headlines, but...
look at you, Griffin. You already sending ambulances to the system?
Send them there.
I know, it's noisy outside. How about that? So, something to monitor, but, hey, it's May. He should be fine by beginning of the season. So, with that... Checking the time. All right, we got plenty of time. We should be able to get this in. I say this every time. In under an hour. Fingers crossed. Probably won't happen. We're going to start with our topic of the day, which is our early consensus wide receiver rankings. Now, as always, I want to preface this by saying this is standard scoring. The reason we do standard scoring, our preferred... Well, actually, I talked about this last time. We all were different. But I know my preferred method is half point, because I just don't like how you overvalue guys who catch a ball for like 1 yard and they get 11 points or whatever, or a 1.1 point rather. So just seems like way too much. So half point is the nice compromise to me, but we're doing standard because that is the vast majority of the listeners and people out there who play fantasy. So we're going to give you stats and you can multiply that forward into your scoring format. We'll probably have all those variations of scoring up on the website as well. So just putting that out there, and this is. We're talking wide receiver ones here. These are guys we're going to nitpick, but, we're all, this isn't like when we get to the waiver wire guys where we have a big discrepancy that we're going to be fighting over. So, preferences are done. We'll start with the number 1 wide receiver, Antonio Brown. No real surprise there. Pittsburgh Steelers.
Shocker.
He is our consensus number 1. We all had him at number 1. He is going as the number 1 wide receiver in drafts right now as the 4th pick in the first round. So who wants to take it away and tell me why he should be so unanimously the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football?
Well, this is my boy last year. When our other analyst Ryan was with the show, man, him and Ryan and I would compare who's going to be. I know it's a guy. He was a guy. So he had Odell Beckham. He was banging the table before. I was banging the table before Antonio Brown. My guy actually had more touchdowns than his guy. So hey, suck it, Ryan.
But he didn't get to 20.
Yeah, he didn't get to 20, but he still beat him though. So that's okay. But look, this dude has been a beast in the game ever since he came into the league. and just continue to get better and better. His quarterback hurt him a lot last year, with the health and then just with the home road splits. But I mean, he still puts in work. I mean, every single time he's a beast. If your league lets you be able to get points off of special teams, he's a beast in special teams as well. I mean, it's just Antonio Brown. I mean, it's nothing. There's no knock on him. The dude is just talented and he just makes plays.
Jason?
Yeah, that combination of speed and hands and the ability to just run beautiful routes. I mean, he makes cuts in routes that just break cornerbacks' ankles. I mean, he's awesome to watch. Always in the right place at the right time. Can get open, no problem. He does a little bit of everything. He's the best receiver in football right now. So yeah, this makes complete sense to me.
I mean, yeah, just to look back over the last couple of years, going back to when he really assumed the role as the number one guy, Mike Wallace left. He, in 2013, finished in standard as the wide receiver 6. Then in 2014, number 1. 2015, number 1. 2016, last year, number 3. And a couple of those years, he's dealing with overcoming the loss, I should say, of Ben Roethlisberger for a number of games. So, I mean, very, very good. I mean, he also, big detail, Martavis Bryant is back, and based on your scoring format, in standard it was closer to 4, but he was good for close to 4 to 6 more points per game over the last couple of years when Martavis Bryant is in. So that's a boost to the offense, another freak athlete and weapon that they have to cover, so that gets Antonio Brown more open, therefore he's more productive. So all of these are good reasons to expect Antonio Brown to continue as the fantasy wide receiver 1, and I mean, clearly everyone agrees because he is going as such currently in mock drafts. Let's move on to the wide receiver 2 in our consensus rankings, Odell Beckham Jr. Now, again, we're off to a strong start here, guys. We're all in agreement. He is number 2 on all of our rankings and boards. However, he's going as the number 3 wide receiver in mock drafts at the 1.06 spot, 6th pick in the first round. So, guys, talk to me about Odell Beckham Jr.
Well, I mean, you got a guy with amazing hands. Again, speed. Get up and get down the field. Take the top off the defense. He can also catch the ball in traffic. He's not afraid to hit somebody after he makes the catch, gets yardage after the catch, and he's in a pretty good offense this year that's got a lot of weapons. That may be one of two things. It could diminish him, or it could actually make him better because people can't load up against him anymore and double him anymore because now he's going to cover. So Brandon Marshall on the other side of the field. So I think it's going to help him, and as long as he continues being able to catch the ball, because he has had a few focus drops. Like this last year, he had a couple focus drops. So it was like, dude, you can catch the ball over your head with one hand, but you can't catch it in the middle of the field with two. What's wrong with you? So as long as that doesn't continue, he's definitely going to end up in the top 3.
Your phone's breaking up there a little bit, Jason. CJ, take it away.
My bad.
What Jason was talking about, how Odell Beckham has good hands. It made me think about Always Sunny in Philadelphia with Charlie and his uncle. So that was just funny to me.
Wow.
But Odell Beckham, man, look, he's a beast, man. He is, when he came into the league, man, he was doing stuff that was just absolutely ridiculous. The ridiculous catches, the route running, everything, man. He has all the talent in the world to be that dominant receiver in the NFL for years to come. My only knock on him is just his mind. If he get his mind together and he can be able to stay focused, throughout the season, 16 games, and even going into the playoffs, then then I can start to it could be an argument for him to be number 1. But until that happens, right now he's number 2, and that's still good company. And he's a guy that's just going to continue to get points for you. You draft him, you already know that's a lot.
Finished as the wide receiver 4 last year, and I mean, yeah, we all thought he would be a top 5 guy. He finished as a top 5 guy, no disappointment. His first year last year playing all 16 games, got 101 receptions, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, so double digit, over 1,000 yards, all the stuff we expect from him, which is why we have him where he is. And I agree with what Jason said, that I think the addition of Brandon Marshall, though he is a red zone weapon, I think that he is going to ultimately have to draw enough focus away from Odell Beckham that he may not have as much volume, but I bet his production goes up. So I really do still like Odell Beckham Jr. a lot this offseason, even with all the weapons that are going to be running all over the field in New York. Do you have something you want to say, Jason?
No, I was just going to say, keep him away from the kicking net. He'll be fine.
Yes. Just do that in general, because I was getting really old really fast.
Do it in general.
He's just doing all those gimmicks with it. That got really old. All right, so
That
let's
thing
move
kicked
on.
his butt, too. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was that. Okay, some of the memes that we saw off that were really funny. Anyway, number 3, Julio Jones, Atlanta wide receiver. He is our consensus number 3. I had him at 4. CJ had him at 3. Jason also had him at 4. He's currently going as the number 2 wide receiver at the same spot as Odell Beckham with the 6th pick in the first round. I guess it's determined based on number of times drafted at the spot. Guys, talk to me about Julio Jones. CJ, you're the highest, but of course we're all off only by 1 point. So whoever wants to start off.
Well, I mean, Julio Jones, you know what he is. I mean, he is a beast. I mean, he's just like the other 2 guys that we talked about. He had an awesome year last year. I mean, ever since he's been in the league, only knock on him is health, and I think that's why I can't really. I mean, I want to put him higher. If he was healthy throughout his whole career, then he's arguably up there with Antonio Brown. He might be a guy that you might do 1A, 1B when it comes to number 1, but it's just the health concerns. And then there's times throughout the seasons where he disappears and they only use him as a decoy, stuff like that I don't like. My major knock on him is just health. Everything else he does great. I mean, ridiculous catch radius, man. Run after catches are crazy. I mean, the dude broke records with receptions in the game. I mean, receiving yards in the game. I'm sorry. But, he's all that. It's just the health that is the only thing that I have a knock on him.
Jason?
Yeah. I think he is probably the best one-on-one receiver in the entire league. I mean, he's huge. He's fast. He's got amazing hands. Just a lot to like about Julio Jones. The knock is obviously his health, but there's also another knock on him, and that's the fact that he's inconsistent week to week. I mean, he'll look fantastic for 2 weeks, and then he'll score 1.6 points against New Orleans in week 3. Or then he'll score 36 points against Carolina and go for 300 receiving yards. That's phenomenal. Next week, 29 yards. So that's my knock on him is I hate the inconsistency. He is the ultimate boom bust player. Because you could play him 1 week and he could completely shred everybody and win your week for you. And then the next week he'll just completely pull a disappearing act. That's why I had him 4 instead of 3.
See, I thought I was going to be the lowest on him at 4, and I'm kind of playing with the idea of maybe even moving him down. And I know that's blasphemy, but I have a lot to back that up. First off, you guys have said everything that I'm concerned with, and I think most people are and should be. The guy is always injured. We talk about someone like Odell Beckham, who's, he's had some injuries, but very rare. Julio Jones has had, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lower body injuries in just the last handful of seasons. Knees, feet, legs, ankles, so on, groin, so on and so on and so forth. The guy is always banged up. Therefore, he's always playing injured. So that's a huge knock against him. I mean, one you have to take into account when playing him. If anyone has ever had him on your team before, you know that, you have to accept the fact, okay, I drafted Julio Jones, he's going to miss time, he's going to be hobbled. Right. So that's a big downer. It's every single year. Can't do anything about it. He plays through it, I'll give him that, though. There's a new offensive coordinator. We're not sure exactly how that is going to really change things there. All accounts, he's going to try and run basically the same offense, but, anytime there's a change at a major coaching position like that, things do change. Kyle Shanahan is gone. And Jason mentioned he disappeared at times last year because he disappears all the time. Every single year, there are times where he puts up these monster weeks and then does another week where he does almost nothing. And Kyle Shanahan used him as a decoy a lot last year, which that's a big downer for a guy you're wasting a top 6 pick on. And I mean, that's scary to me because you're banking on these guys to be the cornerstone of your fantasy team, and you never know what you're going to get from them week to week. However, like Jason said, he might be the best pure wide receiver in the league. He is a freak athlete. He's quick, he's fast, and of course, anyone who knows those are 2 very different things. Crazy length, crazy reach, great hands. I mean, he does great route runner. He does it all. Has a good quarterback. Now, with all this being said, he finished as the wide receiver 6 last year. But a lot of that remember that game against Carolina where he went for 300 yards and 1 touchdown.
Yep.
If you take that one game, which was the clear anomaly, out of his season and just give him his average for the season production, he finished not with, let me get the exact stats, he finished with 1,409 yards and 6 touchdowns. If you take that game out and give him his average, he finished for 1,182 yards and 3 touchdowns, finishing with 136.29 fantasy points, which anyone want to guess where that lands him on the season? Without that one big anomaly of a game. He finished as number 6.
7?
18, 19?
8. Oh, no. Yeah. I'll say 16.
Okay, well, you guys perfectly straddled it, for lack of a better word. He finished as wide receiver 17. So if it wasn't for that big game, Julio Jones, this amazing receiver, and he is, there's no denying it, finishes as a middle-of-the-pack wide receiver 2. So that's the concern that I have for Julio Jones. I just want to put that out there. He's an amazing athlete, an amazing receiver. You never know what you're going to get from him. So draft him at your own risk. I have him at number 4.
He's like a box of chocolate.
Yes, and now you understand, hopefully, with the math that I did there, why I'm playing with moving him maybe down a spot or 2. So just saying Julio Jones. But unanimously, pretty much across the entire industry, most fantasy players and fans, those are the top 3. No shocks, no surprises, and so, nothing really to argue and debate on, except for Julio Jones. We got a little bit into the stats there. So now this is where it starts to get interesting. After the top 3, we start getting some rather large discrepancies. So, large is as simple as 2 or 3 spots at this high. So we'll start with number 4. A guy which I'm not surprised is here, but I did not have as high as you guys did. Mike Evans, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Mike Evans, we have him at number 4, and he's currently going as the number 4 wide receiver as the 9th pick in the first round. So, guys, tell me about Mike Evans, who in standard leagues did finish as the wide receiver 1 last year.
Well, I had him at the highest, so I had him at number 3.
I should have said that. I was at 6, CJ's at 4, you're at 3. Go ahead, Jason.
Right. So he was more consistent than Julio Jones. He was kind of the guy there. And then in the offseason here so far, Tampa Bay has just loaded up with weapons. And again, same argument I made for Odell Beckham Jr. kind of applies here. I think that's going to take the pressure off of Mike Evans a little bit, because now they're going to have to spread all over the field and cover all these weapons. And that's going to give him an opportunity to be even more productive. So that's why I have him as high as I did. He had a fantastic season. And I think that he continues to ascend.
Yeah, I totally agree with Jason. I love all the additions that they made there. He's a player that I wanted to see take the next step as far as his relationship, on the field when it comes to Jameis Winston. They have a great relationship there. Those added pieces, I think this is going to continue to, do good for him, because like Jason said, take the pressures off, let him be free flowing and be able to be beast, because defenses can't double team him like they've been normally doing, because now they have all these additions there. And I just like how he's probably that he's taken another step forward in the league and in that offense. So I think all the stars are lined up for Mike Evans to just have another great productive season. He did have that health concern early on in his career, but he's still young. He played through it, and I really like him this year.
All right, I'm the lowest, so let me go ahead and weigh in. Now, I like Mike Evans. He finished as the wide receiver 1 last year in standard scoring leagues, so can't argue that. He's only 23 years old. He'll turn 24 during the season. So he's young, he's athletic, he is a ball hawk, he is a target monster. He gets blanketed with targets. That's also kind of the problem, because there's a lot of new targets in Tampa Bay this year. O.J. Howard, obviously, was going to be there with Cameron Brate at the tight end position rolling out. They have a plethora of pass-catching wide receivers. Let's not forget that they brought in Deshaun Jackson to give them that deep threat, which is something that they really need. And, Jameis Winston, he always seems to be that one look, two look, heave the ball deep, let's see what happens kind of guy. Now he's got arguably one of the best guys in the league at that. And, they drafted Chris Godwin, who was my personal favorite rookie outside of the, consensus top 3 last year, or in the draft this year. So they have a lot of weapons there, and those guys are going to demand targets. I expect them to absorb a number of the touchdowns, especially if Doug Martin comes back healthy and gets back to his form 2 years ago. He's going to get a lot of the touchdowns as well. And really, if you look at his season last year, yeah, he finished as the number one, and you can't debate that. But he started the season on fire, and there's a lot of things that contributed to that. One of the main ones being the game script. They were in shootouts because their defense was not very good to start the season. Once you got around week 9, week 10, things really changed. The defense got really good towards the end of the season, and that put them into more favorable game scripts. They weren't throwing as much. His averages dropped by a good third on what his average was in the first half of the season. Also, this could be more of the contributing factor. This is something I haven't heard a lot of people really talking about. He did suffer a concussion in that time frame. Hard to say for sure if that contributed to the slight decrease in his production. Just thought that was interesting. But I think the defense being the big contributing factor there. So I do like Mike Evans a lot, but I just think that his trends, and if you stat out what he did during the second half of the year last year, it still puts him as a number one fantasy wide receiver, but not as the number one fantasy wide receiver. So I just see him probably declining across most of the stats. So that's why I have him drop down a little bit from number 1 to number 6 currently, and I'm honestly very okay with that. I have to finish statting him out completely, though. Go ahead.
I'll make a rebuttal here.
Go for
it. You mentioned after week 7 that he diminished. His 3 best games were after week 7.
Oh, no.
It was week 7,
he had some monster
and then
games.
Week 12, where he scored 2 touchdowns on all 3 of those games.
Right.
Scored over 20 points in all 3 of those games.
Right.
Now, he did become more inconsistent. I will give you that. Because after that week 7 game, he dropped down to 7 points, then to 27, then down to 6 again. So it started getting more inconsistent. But again, I think with more targets and less double teaming on him, it's going to actually be a good thing for him.
Oh, no, I completely agree. That's why I'm not discrediting last year and thinking, he'll be a wide receiver 2. No, I still have him concretely as a wide receiver 1. I'm looking at a lot of the things as potential negatives to him. I think his volume's going to go down. His production probably goes up, but there's so much contributing around there. Plus, that defense didn't get any worse. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think their defense might have gotten better this offseason, so I just don't see them in as many crazy shootouts. So that's why, as a whole, I'm not I got to put Mike Evans in my top 3, on that train, which a lot of people are starting to get on. People are saying that the top 3 elite is actually a top 4, and I'm not there. I don't see it that way. Anything else you guys want to add before we move on?
Well, let's keep moving.
All right, our number 5 fantasy wide receiver this year, consensus, early rankings, Jordy Nelson, Green Bay Packers. Now, we have him at number 5. He is currently going as the number 6 wide receiver, as the second pick in the second round. I am the highest on him at 3. Both of you are tied at 5. So, do you guys want to go first, or you want me to go first?
You should go first.
You go ahead, man.
I will happily.
This is your team.
I love the Packers. They're my NFC team. So in case anyone didn't know,
there's no NFC team. You're
sure, there
a Ravens
is.
fan.
I am a Ravens fan.
NFC team
Through and through.
It's not basketball.
But I'm not going to root for another team in my division. I can root for another conference.
Team. You can like another team, but that's not your team.
Look, my father is a Packers fan. I like the Packers. Get over it. Regardless, wildly productive player, and a lot of people seem to kind of forget the production that he has had over his career. I went back to the beginning of this decade, 2011, where he really kind of stepped into that main wide receiver 1 role. I know Greg Jennings gone, all of those little transitions happened during this time frame, and he went, and 2011 he finished as the fantasy wide receiver 2. 2012 he finishes 31, but that's because he was hurt. 2013, he finished as the wide receiver 11. Aaron Rodgers was hurt. Those 2 seasons seem to have thrown off the trend because 2014, number 3. Then he missed 2015, obviously. Didn't do anything there. And then number 2. So in the years that both him and Aaron Rodgers have been healthy for the season, number 2, number 3, number 2. He is fantasy gold as long as everything works out. He has the best quarterback in the league who throws more than any other quarterback in the red zone. He's thrown for double-digit touchdowns each of those years as well. So, he's received multiple double-digit touchdowns, bunch of yards. Aaron Rodgers has shown a volume of being able to have multiple wide receiver 1s in that offense in any given season. So I don't expect the production to go down, even with them trying to get the run game going, or trying to get Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb more going in these 3 wide receiver sets, or trying to get Martellus Bennett going. None of that concerns me because I know the passing volume and the efficiency of the quarterback in Green Bay. As long as both Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson stay healthy, that's about as sure as it gets. He's never finished outside of the top 3 when that's happened. What are your guys' thoughts? I mean, obviously this is nitpicking because you guys are only 2 spots lower than me, but what are your guys' thoughts?
I mean, I totally agree with you. He's a fantastic player when healthy. Him and Aaron Rodgers are just beautiful magic together. I mean, so I really don't have nothing against him, no knocks. He's comeback player of the year. I mean, that injury last year was horrific. And then just to see him, slowly get back into his groove last year, and then he just,
took off.
After like week 5, he just took off to me. I mean, he just did his thing, and he's a great player. So I think I'm still respectful, putting him in the top 5. You like him at 3, that's your thing. But I mean, I think this is still good and respectful for him as a player.
When I was doing my rankings, I kept shifting Julio Jones and Jordy Nelson back and forth. I put Jordy up, I put Julio up, I put Jordy up again. And I'm still kind of on that fence. And because of the reasons we've talked about, him being so inconsistent, him being Julio Jones, rather, being so inconsistent. Jordy Nelson is extremely consistent. He's that number 1 receiver. As you said, he's just super, super always there. And Aaron Rodgers absolutely loves to throw the ball to him. So he absolutely belongs in the top 5. I'm toying with moving him up.
Yeah. So are you?
Not because of you. Calm down.
Hey. Give credit where credit is due, my friend.
Be humble.
Give credit where credit is due. So what?
I am, and it's not due to you. So there you go.
You would move him up to number 4 behind Mike Evans ahead of Julio Jones in that scenario, possibly?
Yeah. That's what I'm looking at.
Still taking it as a win. All right. Let's move on. Number 6. We have A.J. Green, Cincinnati Bengals. Now, this is a polarizing player for a lot of people, and we'll get into it. We have him at number 6. He's currently going as number 5, so, I mean, clearly, as a whole, in mock drafts, people are buying into him again this year. He's going as the number 10 pick in the first round. Now, I have him at 5, CJ at 9, Jason right behind me at 6. So, let's start with you, CJ. Why are you so low on A.J. Green?
Well, you're going to get a look at listen to all the other wide receivers I have ahead of him. But when I look at him, man, just recency bias, these last 3 years. He had 6 touchdowns in 2014 and, over 1,000 yards. So that's great. And then last year, not last year, but 2015 with Hugh Jackson comes in there, 10 touchdowns. That's beautiful. Another over 1,000 yards. And then last year, he has that injury, and I can't put a lot of knock on against him. But once again, if you drafted him, that hurts you. I mean, like I know the feeling. I had Keenan Allen, I drafted him high, got hurt, and I had to live with it. So AJ Green, his injuries is a big thing with me there, and then just with the offensive coordinator, and now with people leaving as far as when it goes to the offensive line, and they got new people in there. I'm like back and forth when it comes to it. Like, man, I can move him up, but then I'm looking at what recently been happening there. I can move him down. So that's why I kind of have him at 9. I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, I have him
at 9. Yep.
But, so he's confusing. He's a confusing player to me because I love him. But then again, I'll be like, man, I can't stand you because you just doing this and getting hurt. And like, I don't know.
Jason?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what CJ's saying. I mean, AJ Green is clearly super talented. I mean, he's a very good receiver. The injuries bother me, and that's why I have him down at 6. I mean, the fact I have him at 6 shows that I still have a lot of faith in his abilities and a lot of faith in Dalton's abilities. They added some weapons. My only issue with him, besides the injury, is that offensive line. Holding up under pressure. Hopefully it does, and hopefully the addition of a check down running back that they have now kind of makes the defense a little more careful, and AJ Green will still be able to be productive. We'll see. I mean, he has the ability to be a top 5 wide receiver, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, you guys kind of said it all. AJ Green, was on fire last year, and you drafted him high, and he was paying off on that, but he burned people last year. Guess what? I was one of them.
He was on fire.
Yeah. What? You say he wasn't?
Never mind.
You
Go.
said he was not? So
I said, no, he was on fire, and you're surprised he burned you.
Oh,
Just
okay.
kidding, go.
I get what you did there.
Dad jokes.
Dad jokes. Anyway, I was one of them. I mean, I was undefeated in our big league of record, for the first 10 weeks, and then I got my one and only loss to Jason Cabrera on week 11, where AJ Green went down. And you know what? I had so much invested in
part
that.
of my plan.
Yeah, well, it worked out nicely. That's why this beautiful trophy to my right, our league of records, 3 names, all 3 are me, and then there's one more, Jason Cabrera. And a lot of it has to do with the fact I still have to get the etching done. Don't worry, it's gonna happen. But it's going to be Jason, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that I lost a number of key players last year. The most notable, besides probably C.J. Anderson, was AJ Green. I struggled at the wide receiver position after that pretty hard last year. Nobody wanted to trade with me, so everyone wanted to see me fail, and I get that.
Yeah.
But that being said, I'm still not down on
tried
AJ
to
Green.
trade with you.
No, you tried a ridiculous trade. AJ Green, he's been relatively healthy. He's played through some injuries, but he has been pretty healthy through his career. He's only ever missed games in one other season, so that's one thing to point out. He's a lot of banged up hyperextensions, knees, bruises, things of that nature.
Ouch.
But as a whole, he has played entire seasons. His only other year that he's missed time was his rookie year. He missed 1 game, and then in 2014 he missed 3 games. So just putting that out there. The injuries, they are a thing. I would put them on Julio Jones's level, though, where it's something that he plays through. Now, all this being said, I'm high on him for a lot of reasons because of the pace he was on. He played the first 10 games and then, of course, got hurt in the very first series of Week 11. So I throw that game out because he didn't get to do anything. He got hurt like 2 or 3 plays into the game, non-contact, whatever. So 964 yards and 4 touchdowns in 10 games. If you were to average that out over 16 games, he would have been good for 1,542 yards, 6.5 touchdowns, which works out for fantasy purposes, rounding it the way you should round it, to 190.24 fantasy points, finishing as a wide receiver 5. So that's where I have him ranked. I believe he can do that again, and I think that his value is not directly affected because they've added so many weapons. They're, as we talked about, the offensive line was trash last year, and it got a lot worse this year. So I don't expect it to be a great situation for the running game. I don't expect it to be a great situation for the deep passing game with John Ross, but those are things that they're going to have to respect. That leaves AJ Green, this prototypical number 1 receiver who can do it all, free to do whatever he has to do to get the ball, to get the volume, and guess what? He is one of their 2 main red zone receiving weapons. So he's going to get you those touchdowns. I still really have faith in AJ Green, even with what's going on in Cincinnati, even with what happened last year. So I'm willing to roll the dice with him yet again, even after what happened to me last season. Do you guys have anything you want to add, or you want to move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Let's move on. We're making good time. Number 7, Michael Thomas. How about that? He, of course, New Orleans Saints. He is going as the number 7 wide receiver in fantasy, so we're perfectly in sync there. As the 4th pick in the 2nd round. Now, I have him at 8, so does CJ, and I thought I was going to be the highest on him, but Jason coming in at number 7. So, Jason, why don't you take it away, bud?
Rumble, young man, rumble. I love me some Michael Thomas. This guy was super productive in his rookie year. Anytime a rookie can finish as high as this guy finished in the top 10, 9 touchdowns, 1,100 yards, that is a good sign for his career. He is going to be something special, and he's got the best pure passing quarterback throwing him the ball. They've added some pieces. They've moved some stuff around. They've got a better defense that's going to keep them in games. So I'm very, very high on Michael Thomas. I think he is definitely going to have a really nice year this year.
Yeah, I love Michael Thomas as well, man. I saw what he did for last year, man. He had a great rookie season. And then just the relationship that was built on the field with the chemistry with him and Drew Brees. I mean, I'm gonna take that upside and say that now that Brandon Cooks is out of the picture and he's the lead dog there. I mean, hey, listen, I think you'd be foolish not to have him move up on your boards. And if he's there, grab him early.
I mean, yeah, Michael Thomas, he is a beast. Had a fantastic rookie season, and he perfectly filled in the Marcus Colston role, which is that big-bodied wide receiver, red zone threat, and he did it all. I mean, if you look rookie year to second year of Marcus Colston's year, still with Drew Brees, he went up in targets, he went up in yards, he went up in touchdowns, and I think that very easily Michael Thomas could be that guy, especially like CJ said, Brandon Cooks, the other debatable who's the number one receiver, gone. Those targets have to go somewhere, and I can test that. I don't think they're all going to go to Michael Thomas, obviously. That'd be ludicrous. They're going to get spread out to Willie Snead, Tengitt Jr., who they brought in to replace that role, the running backs, maybe the tight ends, Kobe Fleener.
Griffin, we can dream that all the targets go to him, all right?
We can dream that, and I would love to see that. But regardless, I think that there's an uptick in his volume and therefore his production. And I mean, look, the guy was really good last year, and he barely played the first 2 weeks. He did miss another game, and if you average it all out, he was good for 1,259 yards and 11 touchdowns. If you had averaged that out over the course of the season, for over those 3 games, putting you at 191.9 fantasy points, which would have finished you at number 5, 1 point ahead of A.J. Green in the other hypothetical math equation that we did. So A.J. Green would have finished 6th. So that's how good Michael Thomas was last year. And we're all pretty universally expecting him to take that next step forward. I'm excited. You guys are excited. I mean, is there anything that concerns you with him this year? The defense is better, but I don't think that's going to affect his use because he's a red zone weapon.
Just the only thing that could possibly concern me is if they're going to try to do some weird experiment where they get Adrian Peterson running the ball more often, and they try to transition to more of a run game than what they have. That might concern me a little bit. But this is the thing: you got Drew Brees on your team. You're not going to change his DNA. He wants to throw that ball down the field, and I think that Michael Thomas is going to be that target.
I mean, even if they did go down that road that you just butchered, that picture you just painted, I think that would be even more beneficial. I mean, yes, you might be having less touches, but that's going to make the defense try to stop the run, and then that's going to slack up on their pass defense.
That's a good point.
We will see how it all plays out, but we're all very high on him. I think that we have not seen the ceiling for Michael Thomas even a little bit. Great rookie year, and we'll see where he goes. Let's move on. Number 8, we have Dez Bryant, a name that some people might have expected to hear earlier. Others maybe not expecting to have heard this early. He is currently going as the number 8, so we're in unison yet again. We're doing pretty good here with the way this is working across the industry, mock draft, so on and so forth. He's going as the number 5 pick in the second round. Now, I have him a spot ahead of this at 7. CJ, shocking me. I mean,
cowboy.
Shocking,
like a cowboy.
I mean, you did this last year, though. You bashed him last year, and then you started targeting him in drafts. So I don't necessarily know how much I trust you, but you have him at 6, and so a spot ahead of me even. And then Jason bringing down the average at 13 outside of a wide receiver 1. So let's start with you, Jason. Why are you so low on Dez Bryant?
All right. Well, I've never been a big Dez Bryant fan. He's super inconsistent week to week and within games. I mean, especially when you get late in the season, normally he starts to drop off and starts dropping balls. I don't know what, it's like Butterfingers if he had popcorn before the game. I don't know what his deal is, but he ends up dropping the balls in November and December. So that bothers me, and the inconsistency bothers me. This year was really weird. He started out okay, and then, he wasn't really Dez Bryant for a while. And obviously, missed some games. But with a young quarterback who's trying to develop with him, I thought they developed very well near the end of the season. He started getting more targets. He still had very up and down games, especially against New York. New York just has his number, has the Cowboys' number in general. But my issue with him is a couple of things. They're still going to lean on Ezekiel Elliott. That's still going to be a run-first offense. And as we've mentioned a couple times, Dak Prescott is not a volume passer. He's not going to throw a lot of balls, and that showed up even with with him finishing as high as he did this year. He only had 700 some odd yards, 8 touchdowns, which is excellent for the amount of games he actually played in. So He's a very good receiver. I'm not all that high on him. I think I would take him as a wide receiver 2 over, taking him as a 1. There's a lot of receivers I have more faith in than him.
Jason makes some good points. I mean, just like you said, he was slow start, and then he kind of disappeared with that injury, and then when he came back, and then he started getting stuff together. I mean, him and Dak Prescott started building that relationship that I was preaching and talking about during preseason. Towards the middle of the season and going forward. Now, my only thing is this. I mean, look, just like Jason said, they were developing a young quarterback. He wasn't. I mean, we all watched Dak Prescott play. He wasn't forcing the ball to people. I mean, he was doing check downs, and then it would deeply depend on the run. And going into this year, if they do the same thing, I'm thinking it's going to be better because they built that chemistry and built that relationship towards the middle of the season going on to the end, so they know each other. They know what's going on. We know Dallas is going to run the ball, and I think it's still going to be beneficial for Dez because look, I mean, you can look at it two ways. It's probably a negative when people say they're touchdown dependent, but when you're in this offense behind that offensive line, you know what's coming. The man against that Detroit game, the man was throwing the ball for touchdowns to Jason Witten. I mean, so as long as he's in the offense and he's getting touchdowns and getting points, I'm okay with Dez Bryant as my 6th wide receiver because if I know he's healthy and I know he's flowing and everybody's clicking and rocking, I'm going to get points from this guy. So that's why I got Dez as 6.
Yeah, Dez Bryant, when healthy, is a monster. I mean, he finished as a top 3 wide receiver going back to 2013-14. 12, 13, 14, rather. Obviously, derailed with injury in 2015. And 2016, combination of injury and new quarterback really kind of threw things off. Like you said, it started off slow, and a lot of that had to do with the fact he suffered a concussion in preseason, so he missed a lot of practice time to really work with Dak Prescott and get that repertoire going. Then he kind of got back into the rotation. Then he got a hairline fracture in his knee, missed 3 weeks, and then a bye week, so he missed 4 weeks of no action. Finally comes back, starts getting it together, and then was on really good pace, except for, as you pointed out, those games against the Giants. Those were big letdowns. But they had a very good defense last year, and it's a divisional rival, so what do you expect? I think I heard a stat somewhere. I wish I could remember where I heard it, where they were saying how if you took those games out, he basically was averaging a touchdown a game, which adds up if you look at the math. So he has proven multiple times to be an elite fantasy wide receiver, and I think that with another year with Dak Prescott, he's going to have the opportunity to be exactly that. Also, want to point out, they lost a lot of pieces on defense. We've talked about in previous shows, that defense really overperformed last year, and then they lost a lot of the key pieces in the offseason because they were way too close to the cap as it was. In fact, they were over it at one point as we transitioned from year to year, even with the price hike, or the cap hike, I should say. So they lost a lot of pieces. They have a lot of rookies that they brought in, obviously. They weren't able to sign a lot of guys because, again, cap problems. I think they only signed... I can't remember.
It sounds like a handful of players. I know they got one of our corners, Nolan Carroll.
I think Nolan Carroll was their only addition during. I'll bring it up real fast while I'm talking.
Could be.
Nolan Carroll was the only addition to the team in free agency. Well, on the other hand, they lost players like Brandon Carr, Morris Claiborne, Ryan Davis. They lost Ronald Leary. They lost Terrell McClain. Barry Church. So, I mean, they lost a lot of players. They're bringing in rookies. Those guys take time to gel, time to adjust to the NFL level, and really get, on the defense, it's a lot of communication, nonverbal knowing, a lot of trust, and it takes time to build that stuff. We saw how hyped we were about the Jaguars defense last year, and it took a long time for them to really kind of get going. So I expect that to be the problem in Dallas. I think they're going to be in more shootouts this year. Who's the main beneficiary in the passing game in a shootout? Well, the number 1 wide receiver, of course, and their biggest red zone receiving threat, Dez Bryant. So I'm very high on Dez, as are you. Clearly higher than I am, technically, CJ. So that's the counter argument. Does any of that sway you, or is it just the inconsistency too much to overcome for you, Jason?
No, I've watched him for years. It doesn't sway me at all. I understand his abilities, just like Julio Jones has great abilities, but he's just too inconsistent for me. I'll have to look at it. I have a lot of faith in Dak Prescott. I think he's going to be very good. And as he grows with Dez Bryant, maybe that goes up, But at the moment, I'm happy with where I've got him ranked.
Okay, that's fair. I just think by game script alone, he's going to have to get enough volume to move up. So let's move on. Number 9, we have T.Y. Hilton, Indianapolis Colts. Now he is going as the number 9 wide receiver, currently in mock drafts, as the number 7 pick in the second round. So perfectly in line there, where I also have him at 9. So does Jason. CJ, one spot lower at 10. So guys, T.Y. Hilton, what's the main takeaway here? What do we really like about this guy?
Yardage. I mean, the guy gets a ton of yardage, lots of targets. Touchdowns is an issue. That's he only scored 6 touchdowns. I'd like to see more. He can get into the end zone more. But the guy is a beast. I mean, he gets a lot of yardage. And if you look at the games where he didn't get a lot of yardage, where he didn't really do much, they were against very, very good pass defenses. Denver, Houston, Kansas City, and Minnesota. Those were his worst games, and then Pittsburgh. So you're looking at really high caliber defenses that those were his bad games. Everybody else, he was smoking them. So I really like T.Y. Hilton. I love receivers that get lots of yardage, and that's this guy, and I don't see that really changing.
I mean, the guy performs. I mean, he was just on our NFL Top 100 this past week. I mean, the dude performs. Mm-hmm. He goes out there. He's Andrew Luck's guy, so Andrew Luck's going to be slinging that thing, and then he's going to be the beneficiary because of that. I don't have any negative when it comes to him. I mean, he can do everything. I mean, slants, in routes, out routes. I mean, he performs and he gets points for you. It's I think it's still respectful. I mean, I was actually about to have him outside of top 10, but then as I looked at everything and then just looking and moving forward, I was like, man, I gotta keep putting him in the top 10.
Yeah. I mean, you guys basically said it all. I don't want to linger and repeat too much. A guy gets crazy high yardage. He's missed 2 games in his entire career, one in his rookie year, one in 2014. After his rookie year, the last 4 years, he's topped 1,000 yards. His biggest knock, of course, touchdowns. He's never gotten more than 7 touchdowns in a season. Does that opportunity increase this year? Maybe. I think that he's going to be more open because they brought in more receiving weapons. The run game could be more of a threat. He's just got such a high floor, but obviously a low ceiling person. 5'9", obviously not the ideal red zone threat, but I mean, who knows? His ceiling could go up. We already know how high his floor is, which is why I think we all have this vote of confidence in him to have him as a low end wide receiver 1. So with that, let's move on to number 10. We have Doug Baldwin. Now, Seattle Seahawks, obviously, he is currently going as the number 13 off the board as the second pick in the third round. Now I am at 12. I'm the lowest. CJ the highest at 7. Jason in the middle at 11. So CJ, tell us why we should be so high on Doug Baldwin.
I think Doug Baldwin is a wide receiver that's incredibly underrated in a lot of people's eyes. I mean, I can see how they look at it as far as that Seattle Seahawks offense is kind of like the Saints a couple years ago. There was just so many targets there. There's nothing really consistent there. But when I look at his game, he's a guy that continues to stand out week after week. I mean, he has that great relationship with Russell Wilson, and he goes out there and performs. I mean, he had that magical year 2 years ago that was absolutely ridiculous. And then, last year was a little drop-off. But the reason why the drop-off was like that because Russell Wilson was hurt. I mean, if Russell Wilson played those games, we don't even know what kind. I mean, his numbers would probably be even more. Definitely what it was now. I mean, what he finished. So I'm just looking at that. I just see all the upside. I mean, I think that they made some improvements on offensive line. I mean, they got the running game going on with bringing Eddie Lacy there. They have some stars that risen during the play when they were running through the playoffs as far as Richardson, and then you got Jimmy Graham coming back for another year, Tyler Lockett coming another year. So he has other weapons there where he's not going to be drawing the double team. I just think that he's just a good wide receiver that's perfect in that offense, and he shows up.
I obviously watch this guy twice a year, and he, as CJ mentioned, he's a very underrated wide receiver, and the reason is because that Seattle Seahawks offense, despite their quarterback, is not very flashy. They don't heave the ball down the field all that much. But with Doug Baldwin, you look at the last 2 years. This year he finished number 10 overall. Last year, he finished I'm sorry, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, 10
and
this
then
year.
last year was number
7.
Yeah, and 7 the year before. So he's been a top 10 wide receiver 2 years running, and over 1,000 yards both years. And last year, 14 touchdowns, which is phenomenal. That's when he kind of blew up near the end of the season and started getting lots and lots of targets. Now in this season, it was a little bit the other way. He started out really well, and then he kind of petered off, and then he got hot again, and then he kind of petered off again, and he blew up on my Cardinals in Week 16. But
that's true.
Dang it. That's all right. We didn't lose. So, I mean, the thing with him is that he's frustrating because he is obviously talented and he's obviously that number one guy. But the reason I don't have him ranked up in the top 10 is because you've got Jimmy Graham there, and I think he's going to come on a little bit more and take some more of those targets away as far as touchdowns. He's going to scalp some of those touchdowns away. But Doug Baldwin is still going to be a wide receiver 1. He's been a wide receiver 1 the last 2 years running, and I think that's just going to continue. He's a very solid receiver, and he's scrappy. Once he gets the ball, he gets lots of yardage after the catch. So I really like Doug Baldwin.
I want to start this off by saying that I agree with everything you guys have said. I think Doug Baldwin has been coming into his own. I think he is underrated, and here we have him as a consensus number 1 fantasy receiver. That being said, as we talked about before we started recording, I've already moved him down from 12 in my mind. And the reason for it, I'll get into. The main thing being, of course, the history. Now, Seattle has transitioned into more of a passing offense the last 2 years, and that has really helped him. Mm-hmm. Though, while inconsistent, he has been very good. We talked about how 2015 he went on that crazy pace for the second half of the year, was the number 1 receiver in fantasy for the second half of the year, finished as the number 7. Last year, at least I know I was saying, I don't remember what Ryan and CJ were saying, but I was saying that was completely unsustainable, wouldn't last, but we still had a lot of faith in him. Finished as the wide receiver 1 again last year as the number 10 overall. But I want to point out something that's changing. They're going back to having a good run game. If Eddie Lacy is able to meet all the weight requirements, be healthy, be the player he was just last year, they're going back to the times that it was in Marshawn Lynch. Now, I don't think their philosophy is going to change like that, which is why I still have him ranked as a wide receiver 1. But I just want to point out what happened during his first couple of years in the league. Now, Marshawn Lynch joined the Seahawks in 2010. Doug Baldwin was drafted in 2011. In 2011, he was the fantasy wide receiver number 40. In 2012, he was outside the top 50. In 2013, he was the number 38. In 2014, he was the number 44. So really, really low flex wide receiver 3 production. And I'm not saying it's going to get back to that with Eddie Lacy, because I think that this is Russell Wilson's team. I think this is going to be pass first, but that's going to take away from the production. They like to run the ball there, and I think if they can effectively do it, they're going to try and be more balanced. That's going to really hurt Doug Baldwin's production, which is why I have him not going down to the 30s and 40s. Obviously, I'm not going to put him down that low, but I've already moved him down in my head into the wide receiver 2s. I just think that the shift in philosophy and offense and just volume is going to bring him down a little bit, because, again, 2015, magical season, crazy second half of the year. 2015, or 16 rather, last year, inconsistent, but good, but the situation has changed. So, all right, you guys have anything you want to add? Counters to that point, or does that change anything for you? Or you want to move on?
Move on, man. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Right, look, I'm here to have a conversation, guys.
You had a conversation.
I will.
We each made a point.
I will rebuttal.
All right, please do.
I'm going to say this.
I don't want to end on a low note.
As much as you're right, they are getting a better running back, and their running game is going to improve. I think that part of this has been the quarterback getting more comfortable throwing the ball down the field.
I agree.
And I don't think that's going to change. I think, if anything, adding that extra dimension of having a better run game is going to give Doug Baldwin more of a chance to go back to that 2015 season that he had. So he might actually be more productive moving forward with that run game taking the pressure off of the passing.
I counter that point by simply pointing out that we talked about how it was the second half of the year that he was on fire. This change happened after their bye week, where right before their bye week, that's when Marshawn Lynch went down for the year. So that's when they had to switch philosophies. Right. Now, if they can go back somewhere in the middle, that's why I think that I don't think it's going to be back down into the 30s or 40s, but I think that it's going to see a drop. And when you talk about going deep, that's what they have Tyler Lockett for. He is their speedy deep threat. They like him a lot. Red zone, obviously, is much more Jimmy Graham's terrain. Doug Baldwin is kind of the I do everything else. So that's why I'm a little down on him. I like him, but I'm down on him a little bit more than you guys are. So all right, let's move on. Number 11, Amari Cooper. This kind of pains me to say, only because I don't know. We'll get into it. He's going as the number 11, so we're in sync, as the 10th pick in the second round. Now I have him at 10, CJ at 14. Jason, you also have him at 10. So guys, why is Amari Cooper a guy who's been, he finished as a wide receiver 1 last year, but he has been kind of a disappointment? What keeps us coming back to him as a wide receiver 1?
Well, I mean, I'm the lowest on him. I got him at 14, like you said. He had a great rookie season. I mean, everybody was talking about him. Yeah, we're gonna pick him up. Then last year, he was just going through these waves where he was okay a week and then he was bad. Then he was okay a week. Then he was bad for 3 or 4 weeks. And it's just like he was hard. He was just hard to have on your team and start each and every week. I mean, you think you got good matchups, and he goes out there, he doesn't do anything. So he was very confusing, very frustrating player to have. But you look at the team. I mean, You got to look at the plus and minuses. You got Derek Carr there, young quarterback. They have great relationship. I mean, Derek Carr looks for him. If Crabtree is not open, you're looking for Amari Cooper, and then Amari Cooper that he has is Crabtree's there, so he's not looked at as not really looked at the number 1, even though we have him in a number 1. And then they got additions to the running game. They bring Marshawn Lynch there. You got Jared Cook there to help out the tight end position, so you got that going on. And then you just got another year in the NFL and in the system and the scheme to be able to get down. So I think this is a make or break year for me when it comes to Amari Cooper. Not him in the league, but just me as a drafter and looking at him as a player. So I'm hoping for the best with him, but I mean that's kind of the knocks and the things that I look at with him. It's just he needs to take another step, forward this year. I mean a big step for me, and then hopefully he gets it done.
So 2015, Amari Cooper was the number 24 overall wide receiver. Now, having said that, he caught for over 1,000 yards. I mean, that's pretty good for a rookie. Okay, only 6 touchdowns, and that's why he was as low as he was. Then you fast forward to this last year, and Amari Cooper ended up finishing in the top 15. He's number 12, over 1,100 yards, only 5 touchdowns. Okay, so he's gotten better the last 2 years. And that's good. This is his 3rd year, and that's that magical sweet spot year where wide receivers and tight ends take a step forward in their pass catching and become who they're supposed to be. I am hoping that metamorphosis happens this year because given the fact that this was sort of, we said it was frustrating to watch, it was a down year, blah, blah, blah. He finished number 12. I mean, I think there's a lot of receivers that would have loved to have had that kind of a frustrating year. You know what I mean? So I think Amari Cooper is going to take that step forward. I think that he's got a fantastic quarterback throwing him the ball. Their team has gotten better. They're going to be more balanced this year. People are going to have to fear that running game. So I think that's going to open up more passes going to Amari Cooper, and he may end up scoring more touchdowns because, again, that is his big knock. Only 6 the first year, 5 the second. So he needs more touchdowns to get him into that top 10. And I think that's going to happen.
I'm trying to figure out what the discrepancy is because I'm looking at a couple different websites, and one has him at 12, one has him at 13. Oh, one website gave him an extra touchdown. How many touchdowns did he get last year?
5.
Okay, so I'll go with NFL.com. So he finished 13th. So yeah, outside the wide receiver 1. So okay, we'll go with that then. I don't know, whatever. 12, 13. That's
actually,
the range.
No, you're right. It says 4. That's weird. Never mind.
I don't know. It says 5 on NFL.com, and I'm looking at other sites where it's different. So how many touchdowns did the guy have? I don't know. Regardless, that's the range he finished in. Borderline low-end, high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. You know, that's where he finished. This is a guy who went high in the NFL draft. They were expecting him to be that high-end guy. Michael Crabtree was brought in to be the number 2, and he has outplayed him each of the last 2 years. Michael Crabtree finished a couple spots ahead of him. So these are all knocks and reasons why people don't like him. Also, if you looked at his consistency ratings, this is something that was referenced towards him, horrifically bad. He is a very boom-bust player. Michael Crabtree is the red zone threat he's used consistently throughout the offense. Amari Cooper rated in the 50s overall in the wide receiver position for consistency. So that is not something you want in your wide receiver ones. We're talking about Julio Jones and players like that, players that are very inconsistent. Amari Cooper falls directly into that frame. So these are things that are very concerning for me, and that's why I think I'm going to be moving him down, honestly. But the reason I have him where I have him is because I'm having faith. This is that magical third year. He's got to make that next step so that, you know, he gets some of this criticism off his back. We know the talent is there, but he's wildly inconsistent. He's not used in the red zone, low touchdown numbers like we said. So, I think that he can take that next step. They brought in more pieces around him to pull away. We talked about how they brought in Cordell Patterson way back, and we talked about how we didn't think that it would take away from Michael Crabtree because he was going to be doing the Amari Cooper role, but if it could be beneficial as well because maybe he pulls some coverage and Amari Cooper gets more open. We'll have to see how it plays out. So, again, we're right in line with where the industry is as a whole, having him at number 11. I just have a lot of concerns with Amari Cooper. So that's just kind of the narrative around him. Draft him at your own risk. I generally take the approach, I know Amari Cooper's going to go first, so I usually wait a round or two and grab Michael Crabtree. That's what I do.
Yep. Smart.
Yep. So because they finish right around each other every year. And let's go ahead and wrap this up. How are we doing on time? We're over an hour. Dang it. Number 12. I hate everything. Brandon freaking Cooks, now of the now of the New England Patriots. Now, this confused me. Now, we have him at 12. He's going at 10 overall as the 10th pick in the second round. Now, I thought, without a doubt, CJ would be the highest here, based on all the arguments and narratives and everything we've had up until this point. However, here I am looking at the rankings. I have him at 18, so I'm pretty darn low on him. CJ has him at 11, lower than I thought he would have him. Jason, you have him at 8.
Shut your mouth.
You have him higher than I thought you would. So I'm going to let you two talk about this because I am confused, and I will make. I think everyone knows why I'm low on him, but I'll go into it. But I want to know why you're so low on him, CJ, and I say that as you're higher than me, and Jason, why you're so high on him because I thought you were going to be much lower. So talk to me about Brandon Cooks and your thoughts on him.
Jason, drink that Kool-Aid, man. Let drink it in, man.
He's been chugging the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. I'll be spitting it back out. I'll be dropping Brandon Cooks down. The reason I ranked him as high as I did. Oh, stop it. The reason I ranked him as high as I did is I was looking at the rankings over the last 3 years, and he has finished very high every year. You know, and that's fantastic. And he is a very good, very speedy wide receiver, but you have to remember where he was. He was in New Orleans. He's got the best passing quarterback in the league throwing the ball down the field, 5,000 yards almost every season now for Drew Brees. So he's transferred over to a different team that has a lot more weapons with a quarterback that likes to spread the ball around a lot more. And we've mentioned this many times on the show. You don't want to pick up New England wide receivers because you never know who Tom Brady's going to throw to. You know, the only sure thing on that offense is Gronkowski when he's healthy. So that's why I'll be moving Cooks down. The reason Cooks is so high on my list is because of those basic wide receiver skills that he has. He's a sharp route runner. He's very fast. He can take the top off the defense. He scores a lot of touchdowns. You know, these are all very good things. But again, I don't think that's going to happen with him in New England. I think he's going to diminish because of the just plethora of targets. And I'm sorry, CJ, this guy is not Randy Moss. He's not going to be that number one overall guy who can just shred defenses. I think that he is going to struggle a little bit in this offense for his first year.
Well, listen, I've beat this I beat the dead horse so bad ever since this
Beat
trade
it
has
again.
happened. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this because everybody knows my stance when it comes to this. I just gotta say this, man. Tom freaking Brady. I mean, the last time Tom freaking Brady had a receiver to this caliber. I mean, and Randy Moss was a beast. Little Mr. Brandon Cooks, man, he's a good wide receiver, man. I just want to say when the last time Brady had a good wide receiver, these Bengals went undefeated. You know what I mean? That's all I gotta say. So listen, I beat it with a drum. I beat this horse completely dead. It's smashed into the ground. I'm just going to pass it to Griffin because I really don't got nothing to say about Brandon Cooks that I've already said already.
I'm trying to find out. God, I wish I had the stat in front of me. Tom, the main problem with this is everything you guys have said completely. For starters, Brandon Cooks switching from a high-volume passing offense to one that likes to be a little bit more balanced. That's one thing. Two, Tom Brady, which this is a stat I was trying to find exactly where he ranked among the starting quarterbacks last year, is among the league bottom of deep passing attempts. He is an older quarterback. I mean, we all know he's almost 40. He throws almost entirely short to intermediate routes, which is why players like Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola, all those guys, they tend to feast. Obviously, Rob Gronkowski's going to be back. And there's just so many mouths to feed. They've got about 1,000 running backs. Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola, Chris Hogan, Malcolm Mitchell, all already there. Brandon Cooks is coming in. Yes, they traded a first-round pick to get him, so that tells you that he's going to be out there on the field. He's going to be one of those guys that's always around. And, Tom Brady being this great quarterback, you never know when he's going to strike. But bottom line, the offense does not run the way that Brandon Cook plays. I think that Brandon Cooks, like we have said many times on previous episodes, I think he was brought in to stretch the field. I think that he is going to be used to open up all these short to intermediate routes, which is where that entire offense thrives. And I think that he will give you some week winning numbers, but I think it's going to be much less common than the weeks that he lets you down. I think he's an incredibly low floor, very high ceiling type player because I think only if he's beating the coverage will Tom Brady take that shot to him, but who knows how good Tom Brady's arm strength is going to be. So these are all massive concerns to me on Brandon Cooks, which is why I have moved him down considerably. And I mean, I have him at 18, so I have him as a mid to low range number 2.
All right.
I probably won't go that
I gotta say something.
I'm not sure that's where I'm going to leave him. I'm just saying that's where I have him right now.
I'm listening to both of you guys, and Griffin, you're more annoying talking about this than anything. I want to know why both of you all of a sudden believe that Brandon Cooks can only run fly routes. Like that's his only thing. That he was only brought in to do 9 routes. Like the Patriots don't have coaching staff that can make him do slants. Because I'm sure.
Why would they need to?
You do.
Why would they need to? CJ?
What do you mean? Why would they need you?
Look who they got on their team.
Okay,
you have Amendola, who's a mid-level guy,
Jason,
mid-range
you are disrespectful and oblivious to football. If you're going to tell me Amendola is a guy that's in regular season football that you should look for in fantasy, he doesn't show up until the playoffs.
We're not saying that at all.
Finish what I'm telling. I'm not saying he's going to be the guy. What I'm saying is you're talking about him running these intermediate routes. They've got like 4 or 5 guys that's all they do is run intermediate routes. I'm talking about Edelman. They just added a guy recently who's another intermediate slot route receiver guy. They've got Gronkowski who runs medium routes. Why in the world would they take a speedster who's a 5'9" guy and have him run intermediate routes all the time? They're going to use him to take the top off the defense. That's why they got him in there. They're not going to go into the slot and run a short route. He's not going to do that.
That's a dumb mindset to just think that this dude is going to come there every play after every play. That's all he does is going to be 9 routes. No, absolutely not. Freaking Bill Belichick was going to use him in the slot game. He's probably going to use his slants. He's going to use post routes. He used 9 routes. He is a receiver that can run the whole route tree, and Belichick is going to utilize that. That's the only reason he brought him in there. Is because he can be able to utilize that route tree, and he's young and he's elusive. He's not just a gadget player that you can just throw out there and say, okay, Cooks, we're going to give up those picks. We're going to give our first round pick so we can just have you just run 9 routes all the freaking time. Oh, don't mind us just because we got all these other guys that can be able to play these positions.
They're going to have
You're better than them. You're better than them, so we're going to have you use those routes because you're better than them.
Things are getting a little bit
think
too
he's
spicy
better-
for the pepper here, CJ.
Yes, it is.
Um,
I'm trying because the mindset is both of you guys talking about that all he can do that they brought him in there is 9 routes. That's stupid. That's a stupid thought.
Can I rebuttal?
You can rebuttal.
I don't believe for a second that that's all he can do. In fact, we saw in New Orleans that he can do a lot of other things as well. But to Jason's point, they have a ton of guys in that offense who excel at that. That is all Julian Edelman does. That is all that Danny Amendola does. Chris Hogan has speed, but they're going to use him in that way. I bet Brandon Cooks will be used in that way as well from time to time. Malcolm Mitchell is going to be more the red zone guy. I mean, obviously, Gronk, short, medium routes, he can go deep. They brought in Dwayne Allen to be another pass-catching route guy who's going to be short to intermediate. That's where that whole offense thrives. So even if they use him in that way, there's going to be a ton of other guys doing that. And I think as a whole, yes, he will do it from time to time. I'm not saying that he won't. He's going to be used for go routes. He's going to be used for post routes. He's going to go slants. He's going to be used to stretch the field, get some of those defenders deep so they can open up everything else underneath. That's what they're going to be using primarily. So that's why I can't get on board and say this guy, he went from New Orleans to New England and that moves him up in my projections, because it doesn't. It can't. So that's what I'm saying. Yes, you're right, but I think you're going too far the other direction as well. You're overvaluing when he is going to be used that way.
I mean, I see people's mindset just because that's all you saw him do as far as the highlight plays in New Orleans. That's all he does is 9 routes.
Well, yeah,
and that's what
because those make highlights. That's why you see those.
That's the highlights. That's all you see. He's a better receiver than that can be able to do everything.
I agree.
Just like you said, that's what I think that he's going to be doing in the Patriots. I look at the Patriots route when it comes to their wide receiving core. I have him on the top of the list because I don't see anybody else that's better than him when it comes to running routes. Look, I love the heart and the dog that's in Amendola.
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 Yep.
Edelman, I'm sorry, not Amendola. He's trash. Edelman. I like the heart. I like the dog that's in Edelman, but he's not better than Brandon Cooks. He's not. I'm just gonna say that he's just not. I love the heart in him. But you have Chris Hogan there. And he was a good receiver when it comes to the playoffs, and he was spotty throughout the season. These guys are at a position in this offense that they're versatile. They can move around. Belichick's going to do that.
I agree.
You can still use Brandon Cooks to take the top off the field just because any route that he does effectively and he gets on the defender, that's a touchdown waiting to happen.
I agree.
And Brady's going to see that and he's going to utilize that. I'm just saying this: you bring Brady, a type of talent like Brandon Cooks is, into this offense, no matter where they put him there, Brady's going to utilize him, get the best for him. That's going to equal fantasy points. That's what I'm just saying.
Yeah, and that'll be going deep so that the entire offense feasts, not just one guy for fantasy purposes. But I think
it's
I also
not
think
all
that,
deep with him,
CJ,
though.
I'm going to mute
not
you.
Always
Hold on.
deep routes.
Hold on.
Okay, all right. Hold on.
I just want to say.
Here's a question. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry, but this is the thing, CJ. The reason why I disagree with what you're saying, and I agree with you that Brandon Cooks is a phenomenal talent. Okay, he is. He's a great wide receiver. He runs very sharp routes and he's fast. But you have to look at the offense the way it's run the past several years. He spreads the ball around. Brady spreads the ball around. He throws to more targets than pretty much anybody else. And as we've already mentioned, usually it's in those intermediate routes. And yes, Brandon Cooks can run intermediate routes, but that's not going to be his forte in this offense. He is going to be the speedster that can take the top off and be that deep threat. And you look at what he did in New Orleans this last season, yeah, he was really good for several games, but there were games where he almost completely disappeared. When he played Atlanta, he caught for 13 yards, There were games where he caught for like 70 yards, and that was nice, and then there were games he caught for 186 yards, and that was nice. But he was inconsistent in a team that throws the ball all the time. So the question is his consistency going to raise going to a team that spreads the ball around more, or is it going to go down? I think it's going to go down.
Yeah. He's going to a better fluent offense because you look to, and we talked about this when it comes to the running back rankings. New Orleans didn't have a running back game. They didn't have nothing going there. True. They barely used and utilized their running backs, and they just abused
Ingram
them.
Was good.
They didn't do nothing. So you have a running game that's now there in New England that's going to help out the passing game, which is going to benefit Brandon Cooks when he gets open, which he's most likely going to be all the time in that offense. And Brady's going to look to that. Now, I'm not saying this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that he's going to dominate the touches when it comes to the offense, but I'm saying that he's going to get a lot of touches and he's going to get some good amount of touchdowns because he's just that talented, and they're going to see that.
No one's contesting that, but we're talking about week to week, game to game. And I think you might be a year ahead of it. I think because if you look at the contracts, Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola, they're both probably gone after this year. And yeah, then maybe they use Brandon Cooks more in that way if they don't bring more people in. But I think right now with the people they have established, with the repertoires that they have, with all the skill sets and where certain people excel, I don't think he's going to be used short or intermediate nearly as much as he's going to be used for stretching the field, going deep. Maybe not 9 routes, but it's stuff to pull the safeties back and open up everything else underneath, including the run game. So that's all we're trying to say, and we got to get out of here. We've been yelling about this for over 10 minutes already, so we can take this into the post show. We can save it for next time. I'm just saying, is there any final things we want to say here before we get out of here?
I'm good.
We're good?
All right. We made our arguments.
And we're all still friends. Look at that. All right, so that's going to do it for us today. Please make sure you guys tune in on Tuesday where we will be continuing our wide receiver rankings. We're going to be going through the wide receiver 2s. As always, please make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you are listening, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever. If you really want to support the show, and we understand money's tight, life is life, you can really help us out without spending a penny by simply giving us a rating and review. It helps us out astronomically. iTunes, Stitcher, key places to do so. If you want to go that step further, patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics, and we give you a lot of return for doing that, including bonus episodes every single week. Remember, we're here every Tuesday and Friday. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Follow the show on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. Get up-to-the-date information, or individually, I am at GPalmerFFF. CJ is at CJ Hickman89, and Jason is at Jason Cabrera13. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you guys stay tuned because we do a exclusive post show, which usually is not football related at all. It's just a way that we can answer questions, do off-topic conversations, get to know us a little bit better. That's found exclusively at youtube.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. So, any parting thoughts before we sign off, guys?
Oh, this was fun.
Seriously.
All right. Not really. So, all right. We're out of here then.
Thanks for all of the... Oh, all right, go ahead.
Oh, no. Thanks for the what? What are we saying?
No, I was going to say, we've been watching carefully with all of the comments you guys have been leaving on YouTube. That's very very helpful. Thank you very much. Make sure you head over and as Griffin already alluded to, go to iTunes. Throw one on there for us. Give us a review. Rate us. Seriously, It does help. We need to be up those search boards a bit more. Help us out.
Yeah, and we read everything, and we respond to all the tweets as well. So, all right, we're out of here, everyone. Take care. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday. Bye.